This video goes out to everyone who's struggling with a mental illness, who's struggling to find hope, and who's just having a really hard time coping with how their symptoms affect their interpersonal relationships. Hey fam, today I'm outside in the great outdoors because I don't want to be crying during this video, so hopefully if I'm out there's a fly. Hopefully if I'm outside, no bugs will attack me, and hopefully I won't actually start crying because this video is something that's super close to my own heart and my own personal struggle with mental illness. Again, this is a video for anyone who's struggling specifically with bipolar disorder, but honestly any kind of major mental illness that causes you a lot of personal pain, anxiety, depression, anguish, stress. And this is so you will learn to find a little hope, because I know I struggled and I still struggle with finding hope most days. I honestly don't really know where to start, but I'm hoping God kind of just speaks to me through this video because I just really want to help people and help you find hope no matter what you're going through. I guess I'll start with a little bit of background information. I was unofficially diagnosed with bipolar disorder when I was 8 years old. This was after experiencing my first bouts of mania and extreme anxiety attacks as a child. And of course, as a child, when you experience these things, you really don't know how to describe them to people. So I would try to explain to my family when I was really young that I wanted to just take off all my clothes. My skin felt like it was crawling. I was afraid my clothes were poisoned. Literally, I said that just because I couldn't stand the feeling of anxiety that was plaguing me every single day. But as a result, when your parents hear that you're saying my clothes are poisoned, they think something a little deeper is wrong than just extreme mania or anxiety. So they took me to doctors and I was put on a medication called Risperdal, and it caused me so much anguish as a child. When I entered elementary school, it was very fun and I was a very outgoing social kid. I loved helping the other kids in my class, and by the time I exited elementary school, I had gained an additional 30 pounds due to medication. Like, it wasn't just growth spurts as a child, it was due to medication weight gain. I lost almost all of my friends and virtually became the weird girl in school. And the worst part about this was that as a child, I never knew any better to speak up. I never knew that what I was experiencing was wrong. Looking back on it, I'm not sure if the medication made me incapable of actually articulating, I don't have any friends, I don't talk to people, I have trouble speaking up, I can't give a presentation without spazzing or having an anxiety attack. So to all of those who have struggled with mental illness as a child, or who may are struggling with it right now, or someone who is struggling with it right now and they're pretty young. First of all, if you know someone who's going through this right now, check in on them often, because you don't really know how it's affecting their day-to-day life. But I want to say that you're not alone if you did not have friends due to your bipolar disorder, your schizophrenia, your ADHD. If you didn't have friends due to something to do with your mental illness, you are not alone. That happened to me. And there is hope, because come high school, I had finally found enough courage. I wasn't on that medication anymore, and I finally found enough courage to talk to people. I finally met a group of people that I'm still friends with today. Like, I'm 24, I'm done with college, I'm done with high school, and I still have these amazing friends that I met in high school, and they are such awesome people to this day still. So I want to say that there is hope for you, that, it might take years and years. Like, I literally spent probably 4 or 5 years of my adolescence with virtually no friends because I couldn't socialize due to the medication I was on, and just due to the fact that I really didn't know what was going on with me. I think it's so alienating when you're a child to go through these things, because you truly feel, as a child, like you're the only one who's experiencing these things to begin with. When it comes to mental illness, it's more alienating and more isolating, because you feel like you aren't normal in a way. You feel so weird and you feel so outcasted. I don't know how else to describe it. You feel like you're the weird kid, like there's something wrong with you. Middle school was actually so bad for me that by the time I went into high school, I had already started praying to God to kill me. And I know that sounds very severe. I've always been Christian, I've always loved God, and I've always believed in him, but I was at such a low point at that point in my life that I wanted to commit suicide, except I really didn't know suicide was possible. I didn't really know suicide was a thing that like people actually intentionally tried to kill themselves up until I was in 8th grade, freshman year. Up until that time frame, I really didn't know what suicide was, but instead I just prayed for God to kill me. And before I go on, I will say that this was one of 3 times where I guess I came close or had full intention to commit suicide. And at this first point, I did not do it. Obviously, I'm still here. Thank the Lord. I think it's a blessing that I'm still here right now, honestly. But I really didn't know it was possible, so I'm kind of actually grateful I didn't know what suicide was up until that point, because I actually don't know if I would still be here. Once I started high school and I started making good friends, things got better. Although I still struggled often with the medications I was on, I still struggled a lot with suicidal thoughts now, and even just immense depression. I can't take certain antidepressants. They actually elevate my mood and hyperactivate my mania so much that I literally become euphoric 24/7. By the way, I haven't mentioned this yet, but I do have bipolar type 2. So I have hypomania versus full-fledged mania as opposed to bipolar type 1. I can't really go into a lot of detail on comparing them because I don't really know a lot about the differences, only that I do have bipolar type 2. Haven't started crying yet, guys. The second time I got into a really suicidal state was when I was in college. I was living alone. I mean, I was in a dorm room, but I was in a single dorm room, and I just remember feeling so alone. I had just lost a bunch of really good friends that I had just recently made. I struggled to make friends in college because I had a lot of body image issues and I was immensely insecure. Coming out of high school, I had been more insecure than I had ever been, and making friends at college was just kind of difficult for me. And I will say that some of the best friends I made were after sophomore into junior year. But I'm such a loving person. Like, I never really understood why these people wanted to stop being my friend. It was after actually a really wonderful time in my life that it happened that actually gave me a boost of confidence. And I had never felt confidence before. And I remember feeling so hopeless at the time that I remember almost killing myself. And I will say the one thing that saved me was that one of my other good friends who wasn't a part of that group texted me back, because right before I got into that state, I texted her, "Hey, what's up? How are you?" And she texted back, "How are you?" And just literally those 3 words saved my life. She knows who she is. She knows I love her to bits, but I've always told her that she's kind of like an angel to me. I'm gonna cry. Honestly, I totally resonate with that phrase. If it's something to live for, then let it be the reason you stay, because that's all you need sometimes, is just one small reason. And often enough, that reason is just someone else. The hardest part about all of this is that I often internalize the hurt I give to others. So whenever I lose a friend or even just hurt a family member due to my mental illness or whatever else is going on, I internalize it so much. And I'm not sure if this is something that you can relate to if you deal with mental illness, especially if you've dealt with mental illness as a child. Like, I internalize every bad thing in my life and blame it on myself. When I would lash out in kind of manic attacks when I was a child, and even as a teenager, whenever I was home and my family had to experience these things, the aftermath would just have me feeling so worthless. Honestly, I have felt suicidal for long periods, very, very long periods in my life. And the hardest part for me about having bipolar disorder is just the fact that I won't ever really be able to 100% control how it affects others. And perhaps even worse than that is that I know how deeply devastating it feels for me. So I can't imagine how it must feel when I scream or yell or kind of just snip back at someone who I love so much and who I know loves me. I think that would be the hardest thing that I deal with my bipolar disorder. And just what I want everyone to know, if you don't suffer from mental illness, it's like driving a car. When you have a mental illness such as bipolar disorder, you feel like you're driving a car. You do your best at every moment to avoid an accident. You don't text while you're driving. You keep both hands on the steering wheel. You focus, you check all your mirrors, you follow the speed limit, you stay in your lane. You literally do every single thing possible to just not have an accident. But sometimes you might have an accident and it's nothing that you've done wrong. Sometimes you just can't control it. Sometimes either your emotions or your feelings or your thoughts escalate to such an immense, powerful, negative level that they overtake you and you just can't do anything about it, and you lash out at the people you love. And that has been the number one hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, because like I said, I think I'm a very loving person and I strive to give love and uplift and be so positive to every single person I encounter. I love smiling at people. I want to meet new people for the sake of brightening their day. And it's always been so hard that the people who have been closest to me, including my family and even friends throughout the years, it's been so hard knowing that I've hurt them in some way, or I've made them feel attacked or just overwhelmed with my own emotions. It's never someone's intention to break down like that. It's never someone's intention. And it's the worst feeling, but there is hope. I think when you're met with the choice to either give in to those emotions and to let yourself feel worthless and hopeless, or you tell yourself, I did this, I couldn't control it, what do I do now? And you're left with the choice to either nourish the thoughts that will lead you into worthlessness and hopelessness, or you can nourish thoughts that might be a little bit more forgiving and a little bit more uplifting. It's hard. It's hard not to give into those worthless thoughts, because you're just as mad at yourself as the others are at you. In fact, you're probably more mad at yourself because you couldn't control it and there was nothing you can do. There's nothing I would want more than just to give endless love to those who have tolerated me throughout the years. I've been told such positive things by people I'm not very close to, and then the people closest to me I've hurt a lot, my family especially. And whenever I do find moments of hope, it comes from knowing that God forgives me, and also knowing that I didn't control it and I couldn't. And I think we can learn a lot about forgiveness from God. I think knowing that as long as we ask for it in Jesus's name and we pray for it, that he will give it to us. The hardest part about it is just forgiving yourself the way you forgive others, forgiving yourself the way you want God to forgive you, because if you don't forgive yourself for those things, it's just gonna eat you up. And the hope you get comes from learning about forgiveness. Sometimes you can't forgive yourself in the moment, but just being able to seek out the resources where you can learn to forgive. Whatever your religion is, whatever you believe in, whether you believe in something or not, forgiveness is so important. Talk to the most forgiving person you know and ask them questions about how they do it and why they do it. And really try to teach yourself how to be forgiving, especially for yourself, because you were born with a chemical imbalance. You were born with something in your brain that's a little different than other people's. You were born a little different, and that's okay, and you can't do anything about it. I won't talk about the third time I almost committed suicide. I just want to kind of end this video on a more uplifting note, saying that once you start learning how to forgive yourself for the things you could have never controlled, that's when the hope comes in, that's when healing comes in. And it's not perfect, and it's a really messy, dark process. I've been seeing therapists for years. I've been on medication for years. Right now I'm on a really good mixture of medications. And I can only thank my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for that, because he's the one who finally led me to a doctor who prescribed the right medications. And honestly, it just works out like that. But I also know persevering through all of that has brought me creativity, a deep, deep ability to be empathetic, and it makes me extremely sensitive. I'm also a highly sensitive person, but there is hope for anyone who is going through this. And as much as mental illness is awful and it makes you want to die sometimes, there is so much beauty in it. There is beauty in the love and strength and perseverance that you gain from going through it. And there is beauty in your suffering, even though it's the ugliest thing ever. Anyway, I really hope this video brought you hope, and I really hope you know you're never ever alone in what you're going through. I would love to connect with you and give you a little bit of positive encouragement. So if you just need a little bit of a compliment, or just an uplifting Bible verse, or just an uplifting verse in general, if you just want me to say a positive affirmation to you, let me know in the comments how you're feeling, what you need right now, and I'll give you a little bit of positivity to brighten up your day. You are not alone, and honestly, you're such a strong person for going through all of this. On a much lighter note, you are not alone, and you are such a badass for going through all of this mental struggle. And I know the world is a million times better with you in it, because you've been through so much. You are a beautiful person, and there are people who love you despite the pain you may have caused them, and despite the pain you've caused yourself. And know that you are loved by God each and every second.